is up, you guys? Welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here, just welcome. My name is Gemma Jade, and today I am covering a really old case that happened in 1899. I decided to cover this case because I want to do something in November called Throwback Thursday, where every Thursday I upload a really old case, anything before the year 2000, but like going way back, even in different centuries. And I want to kind of feel you guys out. You let me know what you think. Let's jump right in. Louise Josephine Massett was born on June 15th, 1863, and she was a Gemini. She was born in Russell Square in London. I don't know what Russell Square means. Is it like that a hospital or a street? It just says born in Russell Square, London. My people from UK, let me know. Sorry. Her father was a Frenchman named Etienne Massett, and her mother's name was Elizabeth, and Elizabeth was from England. Louise was the middle child of 3 girls, and while her parents weren't overly wealthy or rich, they were definitely able to provide a comfortable lifestyle for their children, for their family. Louise spoke both of her parents' native tongues, so English and French, and she was considered very, very attractive for the time. And because of the comfortable upbringing, she had her education in London, but she also spent some time in France. She was considered a smart and cultured young woman. In 1895, Louise found out that she was pregnant, and in May of 1896, she gave birth to a baby boy that she named Manfred. The child was illegitimate, and in the 1800s, at that time, having a child out of wedlock would have put a huge stigma on not just Louise, but on the baby and also on her family. It would have kind of given them like a bad name. Do you know what I mean? Like, people would have, you guys know what that would have done back in 1896. Because of this, she moved away to go and live with her older sister Leonia and Leona's husband Richard. Louise's sister Leonia and her brother-in-law didn't charge her anything to stay with them, but she was financially responsible for little Manfred, so she wanted to go out and find work. She answered an advertisement in the paper for a daytime governess, and obviously she couldn't do this job while also caring for little Manfred, so she chose to take the job so she can make money, and she sent little Manfred, when he was just a few months old, to go and live with a woman named Helen Gentle. I mean, I totally understand this because she had to practically live with this other family to be governess to their child. She wanted Manfred to be taken care of. I don't know why her sister and brother-in-law couldn't do it. I did look for that information because I was curious, but I couldn't find an answer. So the governess job was only a daytime gig, so at nighttime, because she was very accomplished playing the piano, Louise taught piano as another way to make more money. Miss Gentle charged Louise 37 shillings a month to care for little Manfred because she was basically, you know, his full-time mom at that point. And Louise told everybody that Manfred's father was the one paying Miss Gentle. I was never able to confirm that, but I don't think it's true. I don't know anything about the father. I didn't see anything about the father, but the father will come up later on in the story. Louise saw her son Manfred on Wednesdays, and every Wednesday she would take him to the same park so that he can play with other children and so that, of course, she can spend some time with him. In September of 1898, a Frenchman named Lucas, and that's his last name, I couldn't even begin to try to pronounce or spell his first name, and he moved in next door to where Louise was living with her sister and brother-in-law, and despite him being only 19 years old and Louise being in her 30s at this point, I think she was 32, they had this great love affair. They kind of fell for each other and fell in love. In May of 1899, Lucas, Louise, and 2 of Lucas's friends went to Brighton for the weekend, and they spent their time at a place called Finley's Guest House, so Finley's Hotel. Louise and Lucas loved it so much that they decided they were going to make a plan for the 2 of them to go there by themselves and have kind of a romantic getaway. Louise at this point felt like she should tell Lucas that she did in fact have a son, and when she did, Lucas was totally fine with it, and he told her, you know, not to worry about it. He loved kids. He wasn't judging her. He just loved her, and he accepted the fact that she had a child, even out of wedlock, even an illegitimate one. It didn't bother him at all. On October 16th, 1899, Miss Gentle received a letter from Louise, and the letter stated that Manfred's father wanted custody of Manfred, and for Manfred to come to France and get educated and, you know, be with his biological father. Miss Gentle had had Manfred at this point for 3 years, but Miss Gentle agreed with Louise that the best thing for Manfred would be to go to France and get his education there and also get to know his biological father. 8 days later, on October 24th, Louise met Lucas at the train station on Liverpool Street. She informed him she would be traveling to Brighton the following Friday, and while Lucas agreed to meet her there, he wouldn't be able to leave until Saturday the 29th, which was one day after Louise would be leaving, but he did agree to meet her there. They decided to make reservations at Finley's Hotel, or Finley's Guest House, and they also decided that they were going to say they were brother and sister and rent 2 rooms. This isn't fact, but I assume that was because back in the day, an unmarried man and woman staying in a hotel room together was a no-no. It was another thing that would put a stigma and judgment on them. They couldn't reveal their relationship if they were staying in the same room together. That's all I can really think of. And if you remember, the last time they had went, 2 of Lucas's friends had went with them. It would have all been quite scandalous. Keep in mind, at this point, Miss Gentle, as I said, did have little Manfred for about 3 years now, and she grew really fond of him. She loved him as though he were her own son. But she knew and agreed with Louise that the best decision would be for Manfred to go and be with his biological father. To get an education in France back in those days was, you know, a really wonderful thing. I don't know if it was a better education than in England, but I guess it made you look cultured. It just upped your status a little bit if you were able to do that. And getting to know his biological father to boot would have been awesome for the little boy. The little boy, Manfred, was described as energetic, cheerful, charming, playful, wild, your typical 3-year-old boy, you know. Louise once again reassured Miss Gentle, and they agreed to meet outside the Birdcage Public House in Stanford Hill at 12:45 p.m. on Friday, October 27th to exchange the child. When Friday the 27th came, the 2 women met at the agreed upon spot, and Miss Gentle turned over little Manfred and a bag of his belongings. Louise ordered a horse-drawn omnibus to take her to the station where she had told Miss Gentle she was taking the train to New Haven and then the ferry to France. Keep in mind that Louise had also arranged to meet Lucas at the London Street station, and it would have been impossible for her to do that and take the train to New Haven and then the ferry to France. So one or the other was going to happen, apparently. So Louise and Manfred actually headed to the London Street station to meet Manfred, and she arrived at about 1:40 p.m., and the 2 of them went to the waiting room. This is when Louise just struck up a random conversation with one of the waiting room attendants, and her name was Georgina Warley. Louise told her that she was waiting to meet someone there at the station. At 2:40 p.m., another attendant named Ellen Reese also saw Louise and little Manfred still sitting in the waiting area. Ellen Reese would later recount that Manfred started to cry at this point, and I'm assuming this was because he was tired. So Louise decided to take a walk with him, and she kind of bribed him to stop crying and carrying on, saying that she would get him a cake. So they walked to the cake shop, and it was about 3:00 p.m. when they did this. At around 6:19 p.m. on that same day, Friday, October 27th, 2 women at the train station at Dorkson Junction in North London, which is about 4 miles away from London Bridge Station, where Louise was last seen by the attendants about 20 minutes earlier. These 2 women were there to attend a lecture, and their names were Mary Tiern and Margaret Briggs. Right before they left for the lecture, Miss Tiern went into the ladies' room at the station. The bathroom was dark and dirty and had only 2 stalls. She tried to open the first stall, but something was blocking her from kind of pushing the door open, so she looked down underneath to see what was blocking the door, and she thought that she saw a child's face, So she kind of went into shock, and she backed out of the restroom and she went to go grab one of the attendants that worked there to have him come and accompany her to the bathroom to see what was underneath the door, if she had actually saw what she thought she had. Her traveling companion, Miss Reese, and two porters that worked at the train station did accompany Miss Tiern to the bathroom. The two porters went in and peered underneath the stall with their dimly lit lamps, and there they saw the body of a small child. The child was dead. Dead, lying on the floor, covered in a black shawl, and next to him was a bloody brick. The two porters and the two women immediately ran out of the bathroom, and obviously they called the police. At 6:55 p.m., the police did arrive, and they called the doctor who came and fully examined the body right there in the bathroom stall. The doctor stated that it was his opinion the child had died at least 2 hours beforehand. The body was then removed and taken for an official autopsy. The pathologist confirmed that the time of death was between 2:55 and 5:55, with the most likely time frame being between 3:55 and 4:55 p.m. There were no missing children reported in the area at the time, and obviously there was no identification on the body. It was a small boy. So the police then moved on to what was the standard operating procedure of the day, and they put a description of the young boy, of the victim, in the newspaper. On Monday, October 30th, Miss Helen Gentle must have saw the paper because she came crying into the police station, and she told them after reading the paper and seeing the description, she explained to them that she believed that it was little Manfred, the boy that she had been caring for most of his life, from when he was about 2 to 3 months old up until he was around 3 years old, and she had just a couple of days earlier given the child to his biological mother, and she told them the story that Louise had told her of the biological father in France wanting to take custody of the child to get him educated properly in France and to spend some time and get to know his biological father. Obviously, Miss Gentle was devastated and distraught when she was brought to the morgue to identify the body. She did in fact confirm that it was the body of little Manfred. She was described as heartbroken, devastated, inconsolable. She couldn't stop crying, and obviously this was heartbreaking. This was like her own child that she had raised up until this point, and she thought she was doing the right thing by turning him over to the biological mother, the biological parents, so to speak. Miss Gentle gave the police Louise's address where she lived with Leona and Richard, her sister and brother-in-law, and when the police arrived, Louise was actually not there. She was out giving a piano lesson. When the police questioned Louise's sister, Leona, she told them that she had discussed the same exact situation with Louise that Louise had told Miss Gentle. The same thing about little Manfred going to France to meet his father and get an education. She also informed the police that Louise did not return home from picking up little Manfred from Miss Gentle until October 29th. Leonia stated that Louise seemed perfectly normal when she returned home from her trip. The detectives left, but they did leave two non-uniformed police officers outside to kind of scope out the house and wait for Louise to get home so that they can question her. Though they did not see Louise that night, they saw a man hurriedly going into Louise's sister's house and leaving a couple minutes later with her brother-in-law Richard, and again they were hurrying down the street as fast as their legs could carry them while the police watched this happen. The two policemen then followed Richard and this other gentleman as they hurriedly walked a few blocks away, and they waited outside of the house that they went into for a little while, but eventually they knocked on the door. When they entered the house, they realized that the man Richard was walking so hurriedly with was Louise's other brother-in-law, George, and the house that they had went to was George's house that he shared with Louise's other sister. Then they saw that Louise was in fact there. She was crying in a corner, seemingly distraught, devastated, inconsolable. She could not be contained. She was just absolutely distraught, a mess. I can't even imagine. Louise's brother-in-law, George, told the police that Louise had arrived at his house earlier that day, and she seemed to be in a, quote, very confused and anxious state. She got to his house straight away after reading the article about her son being found dead at the train station. She didn't know what to do. George and Louise's sister, his wife, didn't know what to do either, so he walked a couple of blocks to get Louise's other brother-in-law, Richard, that Louise was living with, to see kind of what he could do, what should he do. It kind of tickles my brain a little bit, wondering why Louise didn't go back to the house that she was living at and instead went back to her other sister's house. And keep that in mind for what comes up later, because theories are going to abound on this case, and this is one of the things that puts me on one scent when I'm completely divided. You guys will see. So she went to her other sister's house instead of going to where she lived when she supposedly found out that her son was murdered brutally at the train station. The next day, the police did interview Louise. She stated that on the Wednesday of October 4th, 1899, when she was at the park with her son during one of their weekly Wednesday visits, she met two friendly women who told her they ran a small private school in Chelsea and that it would be a perfect fit for little Manfred because they had been watching him play with the other children. These women told Louise that little Manfred was at the age where he needed to be starting his education and that he seemed, quote, smart and polite, end quote, and that he would be a perfect addition to their small private school. Louise told the women that she had always felt really guilty for the fact that her son was illegitimate, that she was not able to raise him because she had to work to provide for him. And she said that she always felt this guilt about the start that he got in life because of these circumstances that were beyond his control and weren't his fault. She thought that sending him to this school to get a great education so that he can go on to do well in life would be the start to her making up for her previous failures that she had done to him over the past 3 years, and she was very excited about the opportunity. She claimed that all she ever wanted was the very best for her son and that this school was the very best option for him at this point in his life. It wasn't every day back then that kids got to go to a private school or got to go to school at all, and being educated was very important, just like it is now. So Louise was really excited about this opportunity. The older of the two women, named Mrs. Browning, informed Louise that the fee for housing was £12 a year and the fee for education was £10 a month. They arranged to meet again the next Wednesday at the same exact park, and when they met the next Wednesday, they all agreed too that little Manfred was going to be attending the school, and they made arrangements to meet again for the exchange on Friday, October 27th, when they would all go to Chelsea to visit the school together. And also, this is when Louise was to pay the women the fee, the full fee. Louise told the police that the reason she had lied to Miss Gentle about Manfred going to France to be educated and to stay with his father was because she didn't want to hurt the older woman's feelings after she had raised him for 3 years, kind of saying, without saying it, that Manfred would be getting a better education with these two women than he would with Miss Gentle, even though these women ran a school. I mean, I'm sure Miss Gentle would have understood that, but I don't know Miss Gentle, so that's just my opinion. On October 27th, when it came time to meet, the two women were 2 hours late, and therefore there was no time for everyone to go and visit the school in Chelsea and for Louise to get back in time to catch her train to Brighton, where she planned to stay at Finley's guest house again because she had enjoyed it so much in the past. So she was going to go from the school in Chelsea, then come back and take the train to Brighton to stay at Finley's. However, because the women were so late, there was no way that she can go and visit the school now. At this point, Louise decided to just turn Manfred and the fee over. So she gave the women little Manfred a bag full of his belongings, and she did pay the fee, but she had asked for a receipt. So Mrs. Browning, not having a pen and paper readily available, had to go and look for one in order to write out the receipt for Louise for the payment that she had given them for the schooling and education. Once again, Miss Browning took so long to come back that Louise had to leave without her receipt, and if she didn't, she would have missed her 4:07 train to Brighton. This is so sus. Like, if this story is actually true, the women arrived too late to go to the school, the women don't have a receipt handy, and they take so long that she misses her train. This is all just really suspicious. Really, really suspicious. Louise said that she kissed her son goodbye and boarded her train. The police did not believe Louise's story, and they arrested her right there on the spot and charged her with murder. They charged her with the murder of her son. They just didn't believe her story. The police spoke to the 2 women attendants that Louise had had conversations with on the day of the murder at the train station when she was waiting with little Manfred, Miss Georgina Warley and Miss Ellen Reese. Ellen told the police that she had seen Louise in the ladies' bathroom where Manfred's body was eventually found at 6:55 p.m. Though when she saw her at 6:55 p.m., Louise was alone and little Manfred was nowhere in sight. Not that she could see inside the stalls, but as far as she could see, Louise was in there by herself. Allegedly, at this time, Louise had inquired what time the next train to Brighton would leave the station. She also said she once again saw Louise about 20 minutes after she had seen her in the ladies' room waiting on the platform for the train to Brighton. The police set up a lineup to see if Miss Reese could actually pick Louise out, and she did immediately and without hesitation. She knew who Louise was. She knew who she was talking about. The police then visited Finley's Hotel in Brighton, where Louise had said she had stayed that weekend, and she said that she had arrived there sometime in the early evening. But the police spoke to the hotel's owner, John Finley, and a maid named Alice Reel, and they told the police she hadn't checked in until 9:45 p.m., which obviously is not early evening. She checked in under the name Miss Brooks. On October 28th, a brown paper bag or parcel was discovered in the ladies' room at the train station, and it was turned into the lost and found, but nobody came back to claim it. Miss Gentle eventually ended up confirming that the clothing, a little boy's jacket, and little boy's clothes were in fact little Manfred's belongings that she had packed for him and given to Louise when Louise picked him up at the station that day. So these were little Manfred's things found in a bag in the ladies' room where his body was found. The police also traced the sale of the black shawl that was covering Manfred, and they found that it was sold at a shop that was a few houses down or a few blocks down. I couldn't get the proper information, but it was really close to Louise's house where she was staying with Leonia and Richard. And the saleswoman did say that she sold the shawl to someone matching Louise's description, but she could not be 100% sure when she looked at the lineup that Louise was the woman. She said she was like 85–90% sure, but she was not 100% sure that Louise was the woman she sold the shawl to. It's important to know at this point that Louise's trial was gaining national attention, so she was basically on the cover of every newspaper. Whatever the press was back then, Louise was front and center. This case was front and center. So Louise's defense attorneys put forth that most likely, perhaps and most likely, these witnesses who were identifying Louise out of the lineups could possibly just have her picture in their head because they saw it in one of the many newspapers from one of the many media outlets that were nationally covering this. They could have just associated her face with, you know, the person they thought they saw. The defense thought this was very plausible. The prosecution pretty much laughed at it. They scoffed at it. This was all the evidence the police had, though. The witnesses picking her out of a lineup and the supposed time given by the hotel owner. All of the information I just read, that's what the police had. And the case was sent to trial. On December 13th, 1899, Louise Josephine Massett's trial began at the courthouse in London. The prosecution told the court that the motivation for the crime was Louise's relationship with the much younger Lucas. They said that Louise thought that little Manfred would become a barrier to their relationship. However, Louise and Lucas both vehemently denied this. I mean, Manfred wasn't even living with Louise, so how could he have become some kind of barrier? He was living with Miss Gentle. Lucas never would have had to deal with him, whether he wanted to or not. He wouldn't have had to. The prosecution also theorized that Louise did not want to pay Miss Gentle anymore for caring for Manfred, and that's why she took him out of her care. So essentially what they're saying is Louise didn't want to have to pay Miss Gentle anymore for caring for Manfred, and she knew that by taking him back, it would be a barrier in the relationship between her and Lucas. That was the motivation. But again, Louise vehemently denied this. She also said that she did not buy the black shawl. She did not own a black shawl. And remember, the woman could not be 100% sure that it was, in fact, Louise that bought it. The prosecution obviously questioned Louise about why she would just hand her son off to two random women simply because they claimed to have a boarding school in Chelsea. They told her that had she actually gone to visit the school at the address that she was given, she would have realized that the school in fact did not exist, as well as the address Mrs. Browning gave her. There was no Mrs. Browning at that address either. So both the school and wherever Mrs. Browning said that, she had lived didn't exist. They weren't real addresses, or I guess something else was at those addresses. The prosecution also told the court how the autopsy had said the probable time of death was 4:30. As you can see, what usually happens in a trial happened here. The prosecution's evidence completely contradicts Louise's story of where she was and who saw her where and when. Louise also gave a reason for why she hadn't arrived at Finley's hotel until 9:45 p.m. to check in, when she had stated that she arrived in Brighton, right around 7 o'clock. And it was simple. She said she had stopped at a restaurant to get something to eat and then walked around at some shops. So she didn't go straight to the hotel. As I stated earlier, this case was getting national media coverage, and at this point, the trial was like the trial of the century, right, in 1899. So another witness came forward, and it was the waiter that worked at the restaurant that Louise had said she had stopped at before she had checked into the hotel. And he came forward and said that he and the owner also came forward, the owner of the restaurant. They specifically said that they remember that day very clearly because all day long they only had two customers, and one of them was Louise. They confirmed that she was in the restaurant that day. Definitely were 100% sure, both of them, the owner and the waiter, that they did in fact see Louise that night in their restaurant in Brighton. They were even able to describe what she was wearing and how long she was there. And they said she was there for approximately 45 minutes, which did in fact back up what Louise had said earlier, that she ate for about 45 minutes to an hour before going to the shops. For some unknown reason, the defense never called these two as witnesses, and they never further investigated their statements to, verify or deny if the information was accurate. This means that there were two eyewitnesses who can confirm and testify that Louise was right where she said she was, right at the time she said she was there on the day of the murder, which was far enough away from the murder to prove that she did not in fact do it. However, they never got called into court, as I said. The prosecution stated that Louise would have had enough time to kill Manfred and still make the next train to Brighton. If you remember, the one witness said that Louise had been asking when the next train to Brighton was, and this was after the 4:07 train she had claimed she left on. So either way, the police were saying she would have had enough time to kill Manfred and get to Brighton by 7 o'clock to go to this restaurant to eat, whether she took the 4:07 train or the next train. Because remember, the time of death was 4:30. So if she had taken the 4:07 train, she couldn't have done it. But she was allegedly put after 4:07 asking when the next train to Brighton was. So what the prosecution was saying, and I hope I didn't just confuse this, was that she did not in fact take the 4:07 train. She took a later train and did kill Manfred at 4:30. I don't know about this because she was not seen with Manfred waiting. I don't know. I don't know, guys. I'm getting, like, my eyes are going cross-eyed. So let's just continue. There was another witness who came forward who could have testified for the defense that the defense never investigated further or called into court to testify on behalf of Louise, that they saw two women matching the description Louise gave of Miss Browning and her traveling companion, the other woman, and a small boy matching Manfred's description. There was also a man named John Ellis who said that a woman matching Miss Browning's description and matching the description of Miss Browning's female traveling companion, the other woman that had spoken to Louise, and a little boy matching Manfred's description were sitting across from him on a bus. He was on a bus to somewhere, and the bus had stopped at that station, at London Bridge Station. And two women and the little boy, matching the descriptions of all three, got on the bus and sat across from him. And he said the little boy was somber and sad and complaining that he did not want to be with this woman and that he wanted his mother. This man was also never called into court to testify for the defense, and his story also was not investigated any further. This defense is really dropping the ball here. So let me reiterate. That's 4 potential witnesses that could have testified for the defense and confirmed Louise's whole story, pretty much of what she did that day, from the time she handed Manfred off to the time she got to Brighton. Verifying her time frames, verifying when she was where, you know, if she was where she said she was, at what time. 4 witnesses that the defense chose not to call into court and not to further investigate their stories to see if they were, you know, to confirm them. I mean, this could have really, really helped to acquit her. This was a hanging case. On December 18th, 1899, just 5 days after it started, the trial of Louise Josephine Massett was over, and it ended with the jury convicting her of murder and the judge sentencing her to death by hanging. The only information I could find about these 4 witnesses was the waiter and the owner of the restaurant. I don't know what came of them interviewing the rest of the witnesses, but I think they interviewed these 2 first. And what happened was they had asked Louise twice what she had eaten that night, and she gave 2 different answers, and neither answer matched with what the owner or the waiter had said. So the defense assumed she was lying, and I think they didn't further investigate any of the other two witnesses and just left her to die. The defense decided to discard their statements, so that was the end of their investigation. On January 9th, 1900, Louise was hanged at Newgate Prison. Her legacy, aside from murdering her son, committing patricide, is that she was the first woman ever hanged in the 20th century. That's all I have for you today, guys. This was a sad case. I know that it happened long ago, so for me, it's like I kind of feel like it's more of a story than something that I've seen on the news today. But a little boy did die, and I don't know what I think about this. There's part of me that really believes Louise's story, but because the defense never went and verified any of the witness statements that could have testified in Louise's defense, I don't know what to think. Tell me what you think. Was an innocent woman hanged? Let's get some conversation in the comments. This is going to be my last video for this week until I upload about the party Sunday. But I'm going to be posting about post-acute withdrawal syndrome. And as soon as I get my kratom, I'm also going to let you guys know after a few days how that works. And of course, there's more to come with true crime and paranormal stories. I told you I'm going to update for Halloween on Sunday. And hopefully I can get the pause video out too. You guys know, if you've watched my last few videos, check one of them out. Check out Corinna Slusser. Check out BEK Part 2. I'll put Corinna Slusser right here. Just check out my playlists, guys. I really could use the interaction in the comments. If you guys can, you know, let me know what you really think. Let me know why you think it. What do you think of the case? What do you think of the defense? Do you think the 2 women actually existed? Do you think Louise made them up and murdered her son? Why do you think she did it? Please be sure to like, give me a huge thumbs up like you guys always do, and please subscribe if you aren't already. Once you subscribe, and if you're subscribed already, make sure you turn the notification bell on, because YouTube does not like to suggest true crime content using the words murder and, you know, things like that. YouTube's not going to suggest it, so make sure your notification bell is on, and also inside your phone to turn notifications on so they pop up on your screen as they come. Remember that the iCards that I put throughout, if I say like, oh, I'm going to put that right here, it takes me a little while to do that because I have to upload and then go and do it from my computer, because as you guys know, I film from my phone. So if you see me say, oh, I'll put Corinna Slusser right here, and you don't see it, that just means you're watching the video before I had a chance to do that. I don't want it to be confusing or for you guys to think it's some kind of editing mistake on my part. Don't forget, send me your requests. What do you want me to cover? I don't care if it's true crime, paranormal. Do you have any questions for me about my personal life? I'll do a video on whatever it is. Send me your questions. Put them in the comments or email me, GemmaJade.GemmaJadeYT@gmail.com. If you have any questions. Also, you can email me pictures of you in your Halloween costume. And next week when I do comment shout outs, I will show the pictures. And also, if you put a pumpkin in my comments, I will shout you out. I'm probably going to shout you out anyway, because I like to give thanks to all of my new subscribers if I see you that you commented. Otherwise, I don't know you're there. So guys, have your best day. Be kind to each other. It doesn't cost anything and can gain you so much. And I will see you guys again on Sunday. I may throw in the pause video by the end of the week, but I don't want to make any promises. Have your best day, guys. Bye-bye.